would like. And we'll start the open session now. We'll go with item 3.01, the land acknowledgement statement. We acknowledge that the Franklin-McKinley School District and our schools are located in the Muwekma Ohlone Nation, the sovereign nation and original people of the skies, land, and waters, where we learn and work. The Muwekma Ohlone people are the stewards of these lands and of the teaching and learning that comes from and responds to the needs of the lands and people who share it. May our daily lives and work, learning, teaching, and community engagement support the evolving vision of the Muwekma Ohlone for their community and these lands. Next up, we will go to the 3.02, the flag salute, performed by our very own Metals Color Guard. Take it away. And these lands. Next up, we will go to the 3.
Ladies and gentlemen, will you please stand and remove your hats for the presentation of colors? Color Guard advance. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Prepare to post the colors. Post the colors. Color card dismissed. Thank you. Please be seated. Hi, my name is Zoe Benson. I'm in 4th grade, and today I'm here with my mom.
Hi, my name is Helena, and I'm in 4th grade, and I'm a student council member, and today I'm here with my mom.
Good evening. My name is Jose Horta. I am in 6th grade and I am in student council for Meadows Elementary.
Good evening. Hello, my name is Nicholas Moore and I am in student council at Meadows Elementary and I am here with my mom.
Let's give them one more round of applause, please. Great job they did. Thank you again, Meadows Color Guard and parents. Bring your children here. Next up, we will move on to item 3.03, approve, disapprove additions to the agenda. Board members, do we have any? Seeing none, we'll move on to 3.04, approve, disapprove order of the agenda. Seeing none, we will move on to item 3.05, report of action taken in closed session. Superintendent Cruz.
Yes, the board approved the January 25th, 2022 closed session minutes at a vote of 4 in favor and 1 abstention. There is no other action to report.
Thank you, Superintendent Cruz. Moving on to item 4, oral communications. Members of the public may address the board on any issue within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board or agenda items. Members of the public may also address the board on consent items before the board's consideration of the items. In accordance with Board Bylaw 9323, individual remarks will be limited to 3 minutes each, unless otherwise stipulated. No action can be taken on any agenda items at this time. Questions may be referred to the administration or put on a future agenda. At this moment, do we have anyone on the Zoom call that would?
We are no longer taking public comment through Zoom, only by those that submitted in writing for it to be read into the record. And I just checked, and we do not have any public comment.
Okay, thank you for that, Superintendent Cruz. With that, we'll move on to item 5, information, discussion, and/or action items. 5.01, the 2022 supplemental update to the annual LCAP update presentation. Amy.
Yeah, and Mr. Vaughn. Good evening, President Tran, members of the board, Superintendent Cruz. Today, I am bringing to you the mid-year supplemental LCAP update to the LCAP annual update that you will receive in June. So just a little background. In our AB 130, it required LEAs for us to present an update on the annual update. So basically a mid-year update to the LCAP as a result of receiving additional fundings and grant monies to increase our budget in response to COVID relief and expanded learning opportunities. And so we're required to present. So this is just a presentation only. It's not an action item. I'm just presenting where we are in terms of progress on our LCAP. So I'll give you an update of any available metrics that I have, as well as expenditures. Please keep in mind, you will get a full update of all metrics and expenditures when we bring the LCAP for approval in June. So this is just a presentation of where we are at this point in time. And I've asked Assistant Superintendent Vaughn to talk a little bit about just kind of where we are on the overall budget.
Okay, as discussed during our 45-day budget revision that was presented to the board on August 10th, 2021, the district identified significant increases in funding sources for the district and presented that information. We also discussed some significant changes in our expenditures, as well as some reduction in expenditures due to the reduction in the unemployment insurance percent that is covered by the employer, which is Franklin-McKinley School District. As you can see here, the total LCFF funds that was adopted as part of our adoption process in June was $76.4 million. As part of the enacted budget from the state, the additional funds received by the district amounted to about $2.2 million more, which is presented in the final column of $78.675 million. This number includes the LCFF supplemental and concentration grant dollars below in line number 2 or row number 2, which initially started at 16.5 million and now is 18.7 million. The reason why there's an increase in these dollars because the formula for LCFF changed. The concentration grant formula changed to provide additional funding per student for those demographics that generate those dollars. That includes English learners, those who are eligible for free and reduced meal plans, and foster youth. Those dollars are provided to districts to provide additional services and supports, direct services and supports to students within the classroom. In addition, ESSER 3 funding came through in the adopted budget, and the district recorded $6 million worth of ESSER 3 funding to be recognized in this fiscal year 21-22. In totality, we are expected to receive $18 million worth of ESSER 3 funding. but we expect to spend it over 3 years, 6 million each year. That's why only 6 million is recognized in the update to the budget. Lastly, we received additional fundings related to the expanded learning opportunities program. That is to the tune of $4.9 million. This is a program to provide additional supports and services to students by expanding the school year by 30 days, which can be done during the summer session as well as during the intersession periods, including the winter break, President's Week, and other breaks during the year. Additionally, we can also extend opportunities to students after school. The district is looking at braiding our current choral program that provides after-school support for our students that are most impacted. And finally, the district of our size and with our demographics needs to offer these additional services to students for K through 6 for all unduplicated students in that particular grade span. Failure to do so could mean for districts that the money that you receive under the Expanded Learning Opportunities Program, in this case, 4.9 million for Franklin-McKinley School District, would have to go back to the state. Lastly, I would point out that under the Expanded Learning Opportunities Program, this funding is actually funding that will be provided to us over the next 3 years, including this year and the next 2 years, at the tune of 4.9 million.
Just one clarification on that one, Jason. Is the ESSA 3 funding and the Expanded Learning Opportunities Program, is that a part of the total LCFF funds?
No,
The calculation?
those two are separate from the LCFF funds represented here.
Got it. So the Expanded Learning Opportunities Program, you said is 4.9 million. Is that a course of over 3 years again? Or is
So
it
you
just
get
1 year, each
4.9
year?
million this year, another 4.9 million next year, and 4.9 million in the final year.
Fantastic, thank you.
So one thing we are required to actually formally attach to our annual update in June is the template for the supplemental and annual update, which is attached in the appendix, and then I'll briefly talk about it. But essentially, we were given 5 prompts that we're required to respond to. So prompt 1 is how we're engaging our educational partners in our budget act funds, how we're using additional concentration funding. Prompt 3 is asking for a summary around how we engaged our educational partners in one-time federal funds. Prompt 4 asks us how we're implementing our ESSER 3 expenditure plan. And prompt 5 is using fiscal resources consistent with LCAP. I did attach it to board docs as well as in the appendices. And so I'm not going to go over the summary just for sake of time, but if there were any clarifying questions in regards to the template or the prompt, I'm happy to respond to those now. It looks like that. Okay, so if something comes up, I'm happy to return to that document. So as I mentioned prior to starting my presentation, that this is a mid-year update on our metrics as well as our expenditures and where we are in this current point in time. So in regards to our metrics, there are some unknown information or data points that we have not had the opportunity to collect, so I won't be reporting out on those tonight. I have some progress that I will be sharing and ones that are definitive. So I'll be going over that in each goal over the 3 LCAP goals this evening. That is also the case for our expenditures and implementation. So we'll have LCAP action items that we had anticipated implementing that have not started or are in progress or we have completed, right? So I'll talk about that. Just a reminder, in LCAP Goal 1, our LCAP Goal 1 is achievement for all with equity at the core. Franklin-McKinley School District will increase the level of success for all students while addressing learning gaps. Just to note, in this presentation, it's actually live linked into the appendix, the second part of the appendix that has all the mid-year reports for that gives you more details on the expenditure. So if you wanted to look at more specific detail. So in LCAP goal, we have a number of metrics. I'm going to first share on the metrics that we do have some data. And this is data I actually reported our local data in December to the board. So this is just reminding you of a snapshot. of what I brought forward. It's important to note that this is not comparable data. So when we're looking at the baseline of 2021, that's actually spring data. The mid-year update is, I only have trimester 1. We're going to be entering trimester 2 in March. So we anticipate seeing growth. And when I did bring the presentation to the board in December, we had baseline data of the beginning of the year and trimester 1 data, and we are seeing some measured growth in our student data. So I'm anticipating seeing a higher percentage when I bring the metrics to you in the spring. Okay, so this is our star reading at this point in time. We also have another local indicator, the NSGRA, which is our guided reading. Remember, star reading only captures grade 2 through 8. Is it 2 through 8? So we use this metric for seeing progress on our early literacy skills for our students so that we can be responsive to that. Again, it's not comparable data. You can see that it's a trimester 2 baseline in 2021, and we're showing where we are in this point in time of trimester 1. But again, I'll be bringing end of the year data in June, so we'll be able to take a closer look at the actual growth of our students. This is the math data, so same thing, Star Renaissance, grades 2 through 8. It's a spring data benchmark or baseline, and then we're looking at trimester 1. But we are seeing, we did see some growth from our initial capture at the beginning of the year in trimester 1. Some other indicators that's listed on our LCAP, we have our LPAC progress. So this is new information I have not had a chance to present to the board. So I can ask additional questions on this particular slide. So there's 3 metrics that we're collecting on our English learner. We're looking at our overall progress indicator, which is on the state dashboard. We look at our reclassification rate. And then we're also looking at our LTEL. And as you can see, our data in the first columns, the progress indicator, it's pretty flat. We're maintaining medium. And I did want to note that our LPAC, last year was virtual. The year before it was basically not administered. So we have 2 years of lost data or very limited data on our students, English learner acquisition, I'm like losing my words with their rate for being able to reclassify. So that's why you're going to see our reclassification rate is significantly lower than what we're at 2%. And part of that is we had only a small percentage of students that had we were able to test through the virtual administration of LPAC. And since you're not able to test, you're not able to reclassify. And so that brings our LTEL rate higher. So we're optimistic in us getting back on track with our LPAC and having students back in school and being able to give direct instruction in designated and integrated ELD, that we're hoping to see that number decrease, right? The LTEL number decrease, because we'll be able to look at our 4th and 5th and 6th graders that we weren't able to test, give them an assessment, and then hopefully reclassify them. So more to come on that. Any questions about the reclassification?
Amy, I did have a question. In terms of reclassification, what's our ultimate goal? And then the other question I have, we're a K-8 district. So we really prepare our kids for high school. So at the end, when they get promoted from the 8th grade, we hope that they're where they should be or very close as they move into high school to be successful. Otherwise, they become highly at-risk students. So I just want to know, maybe you can shed some light in terms of those figures.
Yeah, so I would look at our desired outcome column of 2023 and 24. And if you look, especially LTEL, like that's definitely a group of students that so basically you become a long-term English learner when you move on to the secondary level. So sixth grade, I know here we're K6, but technically it's 6th grade and then 7th and 8th grade. So if you have been identified in kindergarten and as English learner and you haven't been reclassified by 6th grade, it triggers you to be a long-term English learner. That's not what we, especially students that have been in our system
Right.
since kindergarten, we want to avoid that. So I would say a desired outcome for about 3% LTEL, I think is a really positive place to be as a school district, considering the amount of English learners that we have in our district. For us to attain that goal in 2023-24 would be really positive, I think, and would be a testament to having our students be prepared. I mean, ultimately, we want that to be 0, but I would say that, and looking at our baseline of about 6%, I would say I think that's very attainable. I know the 24 seems a little bit off, right? But really keep in mind, it's because we also weren't able to test our students. And so a trigger for reclassification is the LPAC. Students have to score a 4 on the LPAC in order to trigger us to look at the other criteria to see if they're eligible for reclassification. I don't know if that answers your question. I mean, it's a very complex, right? Are we preparing our students for high school? That's our ultimate charge, especially as a TK-8 school district. We want to make sure that we're preparing our students to be successful at the high school level and beyond. I think that's more comprehensive than just looking at LPAC. We want to look really closely at our academic scores as well. And then that's something that, collectively we're doing through our academic department.
Yeah. And I would just add, the 6th to 7th grade, right? Because we know that if they go to middle school, just like when they get to high school, when they're still EL, then that changes their opportunities for electives, which a lot of times we know that that's a great motivator for students, that they want to be able to pick those electives. And so when you're a long-term EL and you go into middle school and into high school, then by law, we have to give you the designated time, which takes the place of an elective choice. And so that is what sometimes is very difficult for a lot of our middle school students that feel penalized, right? Because they don't get to take those electives,
right?
Because it's taking place with one of their periods is one of the ELD classes. So that's why it's very critical. Like Amy says, that 6th grade is where we really need to try our best to get them reclassified so that they can have that experience in middle school and obviously into the high school, setting as well. So
to add on to what George is saying then, or the point being made with the long-term English learners, 24.6% is to me a very astonishing rate, but that's due to us playing catch up then to reclassify the students that we weren't able to reclassify.
Yeah, I'd have to get you the exact number. It's pretty low in terms of the amount of students we were able to, because remember they were in Zoom, they were in distance learning, and you're doing a virtual administration.
Right.
It was really, really hard to set up. You have to set up a meeting in order to assess the student. And if the student doesn't come, show up to the Zoom assessment, then you're not able to test them. And we've also have cases of students, they will start the assessment, but then they don't finish the other parts of the test. And so the test is incomplete. So even if we did have like a high initial participation, we weren't able to complete the assessment because they didn't log back on, or it was difficult with the virtual. And so like right now, so it's February 1st, so that opens LPAC season. We have the rest of the year. And so we've already, actually, we launched testing this week at, we're starting at Sylvandale, I believe. So we've deployed our testers. It's still a virtual administration, but it's 1-to-1. So they're sitting with the students and they're able to help them in real time. So that's why we're feeling really optimistic about being able to have a high capture rate of our English learner in order to, one, collect a new baseline, because it's 2 years of really not assessing our English learners or having direct instruction. And then also 2, maybe capturing students that were ready to be reclassified, but they just weren't able to take the assessment. So we're really anxious to capture the data this spring in order to get a sense of where we are and where we need to go.
Oh, it's a long road ahead of us this LPAC season.
Yeah.
And I will just also add, that this will be sort of our test year as well in terms of our alternative reclassification for students with IEPs. Because some of those students with IEPs end up being, that percent of LTELs as well. And I know that board member Alberta and CDAC spent some time in really working through, what would be our alternative reclassification for students with IEPs, where it is determined that their disability may be preventing them from, being reclassified in this, scenario. So that'll be something that we will also be looking at and ensuring that students that should be having an alternative reclassification are offered that opportunity.
I'm glad you brought that up, Superintendent Cruz, because
Sorry, I
this
just-
year is also an alternative. So we're doing a pilot of alternative LPAC assessment. So in the past, it was really up to districts to determine that how you're going to administer an alternative assessment in LPAC for our students with disability. And now the state has a pilot assessment this year with the intent of rolling it out for next year. So we will have a solid assessment to be able to use with our students with IEPs, because it's true, oftentimes our students that are in the secondary or middle school with an IEP and our LTEL, it really isn't an appropriate classification for them.
Sorry, Rudy, I have one more follow-up. But with the reclassification that we're doing this year, and we're trying to, what your point being is having a benchmark that we can rely on, isn't this year also considered an anomaly if we're trying to play, not trying to play, but trying to catch up to students that didn't take the test? So we would have potentially a higher percentage than we would.
A higher, say that the
A
last.
higher percentage, a higher reclassification rate percentage than we normally would,
Yes.
because we're trying to test the students again.
Yeah, we're hopeful.
So
of
even
that, yes.
then, the benchmark for this year, coming back, wouldn't be a fair benchmark for the following years.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to take, I think that's why we look at a
Multiple years.
multi-year measure to be able to kind of see, well, where our students are falling. I do think next year could potentially be another anomaly if we see a high reclassification rate because we're capturing students that we weren't able to assess. I think that's true of all our data, honestly, in the next couple of years of really kind of getting a sense of,
Yeah, the consequences of the pandemic is rolling in. So.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Rudy?
Yeah, and Tanya, you asked the question I wanted to ask better than I would have asked, so thank you. That was one of my questions. The other comment and question I wanted to make was, I'm so glad, George, that you talked about getting our students prepared for high school, because that's where we have a huge opportunity, especially with EL students and being prepared. Now I have maybe Juan might be able to answer this question for me. So if we promote our long-term ELs to high school, how does the high school know their long-term ELs? Is it in their school record, or do they do more testing when they get to high school? What?
Yeah.
Are they going to be stuck as long-term ELs if they're not tested again, or how do they get reclassified when they start high school, or if it's even possible?
So they continue to take the LPAC, and then there's then other assessments that then the high schools use to determine whether the student has met the proficiency level that would be at their grade level. So that's why it gets even more and more difficult as they go up the grade levels, because they're having to show that they're proficient at that grade level standard. And so they continue to be tested in LPAC, they continue to be provided services. And so that, I don't want to use the label, but they are classified EL until they're reclassified. And that's recorded in the record, that's recorded with the state. And so therefore, even when they get reclassified, we have to monitor them and ensuring that they're continuing to make progress, even though we've already reclassified them. So we're now obligated to follow them and monitor them for 5 years, after they have been reclassified.
Oh, really? Well, I mean, it's kind of scary, and that's why I think it's so important that we do all we can, especially from the K through 6 levels, to do what we can to reclassify them so that they're not given that label and carry it on to high school when the opportunities may not be there for reclassification that they might have at our level, in our grade level. So I really thank you, Amy, for sharing that information. It's eye-opening to see that, and also eye-opening to see what Ton had mentioned too, based on our, the pandemic, that it could have had an effect on the reclassification rate for us being very high. Thank you.
I just want to say one more thing. I just want to thank you, Amy, for all the information that you've brought us in this critical area. And then maybe in some future date, we gotta take a look at a comprehensive look at our program in terms of where we're at with the, our EL population and, and maybe the methods used and so on. What are we doing that's working really great? What maybe not that we're going to take a look at improving, but something like that. Maybe in the future, some future future date.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
Thank you, Amy, again for everything you've done in this area.
Just on a similar, trajectory with long-term English learners, I think one of the things we also have to consider is, and this has been an issue long before the pandemic as well, is what are the root causes of why we continue to have long-term English learners? And, certainly making sure our assessments in terms of meeting the needs of students with special needs, that's one area of it. But what are the other areas that we need to look at? I know Superintendent Cruz talked a little bit about the designated and the integrated English language development support. But in addition to that, how is those programs specifically going to look at the needs of, the needs of long-term English language learners, where maybe that hasn't supported them in the past, because obviously they've continued to be our LTELs for a number of years. So I would really like to see what that targeted, better understand rather, what that targeted support looks like. Because again, this isn't a new issue. It's certainly, our data is all over the place because of the pandemic, but we know that there's some challenges here that certainly deserve a deeper dive.
And I'll just add that one of the things that we're looking at is ensuring that students are being provided the designated ELD instruction that is required by law, but necessary for students to make progress. And that they're also providing that the integrated piece. So one of the things is, one, making the materials available to staff, but also the professional development, and then the follow-up. I know that Amy and her team are, making sure that they're going to the schools and making sure that that's, being provided, because there was a time when we were not, I will just say, we were not providing the designated ELD time as required by law. That's something that we have been emphasizing over the last couple of years, and we want to make sure that that is being adhered by the schools, that this is critical for us to be able to support student language development and being able to reclassify. So that's just one piece.
So at this point in time, do we have the resources necessary in terms of to support that designated ELD time?
So with the adopted ELA curriculum, we believe that it has components to be able to do that. Obviously, we'll have to, this is the first year of the adoption where we're in person. So we will have to sort of assess if there's a need for additional supplementary resources. But again, that was one of the other things, we had an outdated non-Common Core align ELA curriculum that we were using until we had a new adoption. But then we had distance learning as our first year of implementation. So
I do think that's something we need to look into is that ELA curriculum, although it has the ELD components, is that sufficient to meet the needs of our designated ELD time? I just know as a teacher, right, yes, I have, the ELA curriculum that I can utilize during ELD time, it may be, there may be some reworking that needs to be done so that it can be utilized in a meaningful way that's really targeting that ELD support time.
And that is something we're looking, very closely at. And I did want to mention with our new science adoption, that's something kind of behind the scenes that we're working on implementing ELD standards along with in tandem with our science curriculum that we're hoping to adopt, when we bring to the board in the spring, our elementary program. There's a lot of research around that being a really nice complement, because a big component of ELD designated and integrated is the oral discourse, and science and lab allows for that to happen. So that is just a little behind the scenes work that we're working on in our department about how we can roll out that in tandem for support teachers with ELD standards while they're also implementing the new science program. But yes, I can.
And I don't disagree with you at all. I totally understand language acquisition happens in every subject area, and that's what we really need to emphasize. But in addition to that, it's also really fine tuning our designated ELD support.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions about ELD? Okay. A couple other metrics that we do have some data on. Well, we have our dashboard indicator, which has information about our appropriately assigned teachers, access to instructional materials and facilities. I can report out on, because it is a Williams Act item that's brought to the board in the fall. Our metric for 100% instructional materials are available in our classrooms. And then also through our FIT reports in our SARCs, that information is available and in good standing. And then our broad course of study for priority 2. So this is a local indicator where we report out on our own metric. And so at this point in time, our students are receiving physical education, art, and music at our elective. So looking with the addition of our new programs this year, are receiving components of these electives. Metrics that I'm not sharing out on this evening, but I will in June. Maybe SBAC. I don't know what the turnaround time is this year with it being online. Hopefully, and if not, that'll be one of my first presentations when we come back in August. Our math indicator, ELA, and then there's attached to our reclassified students to look at that indicator on the SBAC. We are in the process of developing a metric to measure how our students in the dual language program are progressing. And that's something that we're working on. We don't have that fully developed yet, but we are working with our teams to develop that. I will bring teacher assignment and then where we are in implementation of academic content standards in June. I will have information on our writing. We do have a writing assessment. So I'll have end of the year information, and then our ESGI. We're determining, that's our TK K1 assessment. We're determining a baseline this school year. More to come in June. So I'm just going to highlight, I'm not going to go through every one of these. If there's one, I kind of figured we could go through, when I go through each goal, if there's an action item you wanted more clarification on, I'm happy to answer. But basically, this just represents every action item is written in the LCAP. And then the update. So I wrote out an update of information that I have at this point in time. In the column is the total funds that were budgeted at the time of the approval of the LCAP last June. And then where we are in expenditures. Remember, expenditures are lumpy, especially if they're attached to people. You're not going to have the whole expenditure represented in January. And also other expenditures are attached to invoices. So if we haven't been invoiced by companies for services, or the services haven't occurred yet, then you won't see that represented in our mid-year expenditures. And then you are very aware of number 2. That's a large budget item. Remember, that was set aside for us to have additional staffing and support at our schools for intervention. And we've reallocated or temporarily reallocated portions of that funding for ELO, extended learning after school, before after school. And so we're time carding teachers or staff, and principals are putting together programs to be able to support their students. Our anticipation, though, is to repost for the fall in the hopes of being able to also have this position available to support school sites. Can I just go through, you have anything about 1 through 4 you want to ask about? There's, I think, 20 something action items, and goal 1 is our largest because it's academic.
I'll help you out there, Amy. Board members, I know we have this presentation beforehand, but if there's any questions on actions 1 through 24, then let Amy know. I have none.
Okay. Okay, so goal 2 is around positive school environment and school culture. So prioritize and support the physical, mental, and social well-being of all students and staff by establishing a restorative and equitable system and create a safe, welcoming, and inclusive environment that allows students to fully participate in learning in the school community. I have no reportable metrics at this point in time, but these are the metrics that are listed in our LCAP and will be reported out in June. I'm not, for the sake of time, I'm not going to read through each one unless you have a question about the metric.
A quick question. Do we have any indication from the state on how chronic absenteeism, if there's going to be any, like with
Oh,
COVID, how is
allowances?
that being measured?
So that actually is being discussed now in the advocacy from our level to the state for them to understand that chronic absenteeism with the lens of the pandemic needs to be looked at very differently. Because in some cases, in many cases, we're asking students not to come to school. So we're engaged with them. And in fact, there was a letter that was submitted by the county superintendents that to the legislature, and we have a scheduled meeting with some of them to really talk about a lot of the challenges and the things that we would like to see in regards to this particular item, especially around the funding piece. We actually just today, I had an update, a mid-year update from A2A with a lot of the data in regards to our chronic absenteeism. And as expected, it is significantly higher this year than it had been. But what we're trying to do is tease out the chronic absenteeism, where it's not COVID related, so that those students still continue to receive the touch points and the follow-up from our sites and the supports that they need. So they're going to be teasing out that data so that we can differentiate between the true situation where a student is chronically absent and not the student that has been quarantined 2 and 3 times for no fault of their own.
So for the end of the year, we'll be able to disaggregate the data to determine
Yes,
we're meeting
absolutely.
the intent of this goal, I guess,
Yes.
because it won't be the goal is right.
Yeah, so we did mention to them that we needed to tease out some of those things, and that I would be asking for them to give me the data as of March, I think it was 13th, so that we're comparing apples to apples in regards to 1920. 2021, there's no way for us to compare that. So at least we would compare it and benchmark it against 1920, the last time that we were in person. So that data will come back to the board for this metric.
Then there's 10 action items attached to this. Are there any questions about the action items reported?
Members?
And while the data is not in this metrics, you did get a presentation last time in regards to some of the actions and some of the things that are tied to this particular goal and the staffing that is tied to this. So even though they're not listed as part of the metrics that we put in there, but that information is part of this goal 2.
Okay, and then goal 3 is our family and community engagement. We'll fully engage parents and guardians, community members in support of educational outcomes for all students. So this is very much tied to our LCAP, and we're in full swing of LCAP season with the launch of the mid-year update. So we are anticipating, so at this time I don't have any metrics. A lot of the metrics is tied to our survey. And so our annual LCAP survey is scheduled to launch February 28th. So that will go out to our community, our staff, our students in order to collect data for our LCAP, as well as we'll schedule our town halls. I'll schedule meetings with middle school student council in order to get student council and student representative vote. So all of that will occur in the spring, and we'll give update on the metrics at that time. And then these are the action items that are attached to goal 3. There's 8 in total. Are there any questions about?
I actually, going back to the student council one, because I'm interested in how we're getting the surveys from that representation. I know we have 2 middle schools. Do our K-8 have student councils that we can talk to as well?
So all all schools have
All students.
student or leadership. Even the K6s, they have that.
In Los Arboles?
You know what? I think Los Arboles also, but I'll double check on that. But I do know, as you hear when the students come up, they'll say, I'm part of student council, you know, and so what they do is every grade has a representative, and they have. It's more known in the middle school because it actually is a class, a leadership class, both at all three of the comprehensive middle schools have that. So, I do know that all the schools have that. In the past, I've gone out to, you know, meet with those groups and get, you know, some input from them as well. But the more formalized ones are at the middle school.
Just a quick question, under the goal 3 action item 1, do all of our schools offer parent educational opportunities?
I would say through their cafecitos is one of the places where they, you know, as part of the communication, part of their leadership.
But I'm talking about educational opportunities in terms of like courses, or not just
No.
So is this action item, does that cover the goal to have it at all of our schools? Is that one of the?
So I think the intent, especially in goal or action item number 1, is for us to continue to explore like parent opportunities, district, you know, how we can centralize it for schools and be able to, you know, provide support for our parents. And then we can also work in collaboration with our school sites if they have unique needs. Like I think today was a great example with the implicit bias that parents were interested. So really looking at how we can provide ongoing topics that, you know, parents care about in order to support them and support their students at home. So that is something that is still in development, and we haven't launched that yet.
Okay, I would be interested to hear the results of the exploration on that, because just seeing at today's parent meeting, there is a need for support for our parents, especially now that our children have gone through remote learning and then converting back to in-person learning, the behavioral issues and how do parents deal with all of that at home as well.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why we looked at things like PK. And so working with Bridges, they offered it in the fall, still virtual. So it was still available that way. And so we will be looking at the established programs like PK and Parent Project, and be able to then see if there's interest, and therefore then for some of them there's no cost, some of them is, you know, some cost or some grant, you know, so that's why we don't have any expenditures just yet, because the PK class was funded by the Hispanic Foundation.
And it would be covered under our LCAP funding, right?
Right.
So I would even stay open-minded to look at increasing that total funds budgeted for that area if we can, you know, move some funds around, because it might be worth the investment.
I can just say that Title I funds are also available, because there is a portion that we have to designate as parent engagement that is not part of our LCAP. So funding wouldn't be the barriers. The partnerships and the willingness of parents to be able to commit to at least things like PK, where they have a commitment of a series of sessions. It's not a one-time session. So we'll continue to explore those opportunities and make sure that we're bringing those forward.
And this is kind of, I don't know if this is I wanted to say it's a dumb question, but this is just a knowledge thing. Would teachers support educational programs for behavioral problems as a result of our children coming back to school? Would that be covered under LCAP or other type of funding? Do you know what I mean?
Are you talking about whether we can pay teachers to provide?
Not pay teachers, to help teachers deal with behavioral problems of children, behavioral challenges, not problems, behavioral challenges of children when they return to in-person learning as a result of the pandemic.
So we are, you know, that's part of what a lot of the social workers are doing. They're pushing into the classroom They're doing skill building with the students. They are
Well, what about the
collaborating with the teachers.
teachers?
They're
What are
collaborating with
they? Yeah.
They're collaborating with the teachers in regards to how to reinforce those things. The social workers are doing some trainings at the schools as well in terms of how to implement these restorative circles and things of that nature. From that standpoint, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, we talked about this before. One of my concerns when we were remote learning and going back to in-person was, who's paying attention to our teachers and how they're going to deal with these students who, during remote learning, I attended some of the classes. I observed, and I saw the children running around the house, and now they're coming back to the classroom, and some of these kindergartners or first graders never been in a structured setting. And I wonder what they're doing in the classroom.
There's a lot of work being done in terms of providing support for students, support for staff in terms of how to address the needs and how to create environments where students are being supported with some of these challenging behaviors. We have been working with a lot of our outside agencies, Uplift, Catholic Charities. They have the trainings as well, and they're pushing it into the classrooms when we identify the needs as well. So it's not just a one thing, but it's many different things that are going on. In some cases, we have had to move students into an assessment process because we identify some things that are concerning, and so that's also something that is working.
Okay, and again, I love all the support and the outreach programs we have for the students, and also the LCAP for the parent, for the parent education opportunities. I just don't want us to forget about the teachers and what they're dealing with in the classroom. I think it's very, very important. And then you get a good connection between the teachers and the parents when they have discussions about the children.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions on the action items? LCAP Code 3 board members?
So just in closing, as you know, we've just encountered so many challenges due to the pandemic and school closures, and a lot of it is us just creating new understanding and new expectations in our work, and just relearning how to be together and support students when they haven't been in the classroom, and support each other, right? Because it's been definitely a heavy lift from our staff, our leadership, our community. And I just want to acknowledge everybody's hard work and thank our staff and school board and community for dedication and resilience. This has been, I know we say it over and over, extremely challenging time. I don't even think that's the right word anymore. It's just beyond anything we've ever experienced. So I just am so impressed with our community and our staff and our leadership. And I just want to make sure to recognize them and say thank you for all that they're doing. Are there any additional questions?
Board members, any comments, questions?
I just want to say thank you again, Amy, for that information, and I look forward to more similar information that you bring us, especially on our ELD population. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. And I just want to ask if the questions I submitted prior to the meeting be submitted as part of the record, because I think it might just clarify some of the things that I was confused about with the way that the data is being compared, or not compared for that matter. I think for anyone who's going through the presentation, if that's possible.
Thank you.
Sorry, I have one comment to say to you. So when I was reviewing this presentation, I was very curious on how you're going to present this data, because it's a very hard data set to talk about to begin with. But thank you for making it so understandable for us, and hopefully one day we can work with a more consistent data stream.
Yeah.
But I'm also very happy to see that, hopefully in the spring we can have that baseline for the dual immersion program student program. Other than that, just excited to see what you come back with in spring. Thank you again.
Yeah, thank you.
So that was an information item, and we do not have to take action on that just yet. So with that, we'll move on to item 6, consent items. I'm going to read this out for consent items. 7 consent items over 25,000 and 8 construction items. Members of the public may address the board on consent items before the board's consideration of the items. In accordance with board bylaws 9323, individual remarks will be limited to 3 minutes each unless otherwise stipulated. One, is there anyone that wants to speak on the consent items? So board members, do we have any consent items in 6, 7, and 8 or 8 that we want to pull? Okay, seeing none, I will accept the motion for item 6.
Move to approve items 6.01 through 6.04.
Second.
Item 6, consent items under 25,000, 6.01 through 6.04 has been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous. Moving on to consent items over 25,000. Board members, whenever you're ready.
I move to approve items, consent items 7.01 to 7.03.
Second. Consent items 7.01 through 7.03 has been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Moving on to item 8, construction items. Board members, whenever you're ready.
Mr. President, I move to approve consent items 8.01 through 8.06.
Second.
Construction items 8.01 through 8.06 has been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, and that is unanimous. Moving on to item 9, action items. Item 9.01, personnel report. Mr. Vice President.
Mr. President, I move that the personnel report be approved as submitted and that the promotion of the following employee be approved. Claudia Carrillo, BIT SPED 21422. The employment for the following employees be approved. Carla Carizales, Executive Assistant Business Services 2722. Brittany Imada, Paraeducator, SDC Hellier 2722. The leave of absence unpaid for the following employee be approved. Sonia Duenas, Paraeducator, SDC Meadows 11922. The resignation for the following employees be approved. Marina Mireles, Teacher, Los Arboles 61722. Rosara Govea Valdovinas, Noon Duty Supervisor 21122. The resignation for the following employee be denied. Teacher at Bridges 21722.
Second.
Item 9.01, personnel report has been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That is unanimous. Moving on to item 9.02, January 25, 2022, board meeting minutes. Board members take a few minutes to review this, and I'll take a motion whenever.
Mr. President, I move to approve item 9.02, the January 25th, 2022 board meeting minutes.
Second.
9.02, the January 25th, 2022 board meeting minutes has been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, and that's unanimous.
Abstain.
Sorry. 4 ayes and 1 abstention. Moving on to item 9.03, reporting on delegating authority to take the necessary action to protect students and staff from the spread of coronavirus. Superintendent Cruz.
Yes, thank you. As it was on the addendum this time and last time, the steps that we've taken is we've hired 2 additional staff to help us with the contact tracing and the reporting required to support the staff that have just, been inundated with the work, on top of the regular work that we normally have, now we have, all of this required reporting and contact tracing due to COVID. And so that's one step that we've taken to help not just the staff here, but also help the schools in the necessary steps that we need to take to keep everybody safe. In addition to that, we've continued to acquire additional rapid tests. And so we are now in possession of enough for us to do the February break and be able to have us give staff and students a kit of 2 tests to take with them on the Friday before we go on the week's vacation. so that they can test prior to returning from that break. And we'll continue to make sure that we have enough on hand for the spring break as well. Right now, we are making those available to staff if they are testing positive, or if they're not testing, but if they are a close contact to a positive, but based on the decision tree, they can stay at work. We are providing them a rapid test while they get their PCR test results as well. So that's another added measure for our staff. We are, with the help of Color and Jason, we are now transitioning to a weekly testing at all sites as another measure of ensuring that we can potentially detect those that are potentially positive faster. We were at one point doing monthly testing with students and bi-weekly from staff, and now both students and staff will have access to testing weekly at their site. If they need additional testing outside of the weekly at their sites, we continue to have testing here at the district office 8 to 12 and 3 to 5. We feel that is going to help us, detect and keep the virus from spreading if we know who is walking around asymptomatic from that standpoint. We did recently get additional N95 masks from the state, and Jason and their team have made sure that we are distributing those to sites as well. There are there was some concern about the ventilation HVAC MERV 13 filters at a couple of sites, and I'm told that we now have them in hand, and the teams are working towards making sure that all of them have now will be changed out very soon. So that has been addressed. I'm not sure if the board had heard of that, but we are now moving forward with ensuring that all the schools' filters have been changed out.
Lieutenant Cruz, can you clarify MERV 13 filters, whether
that's the
purpose
higher.
of, but was the purpose of that to address the coronavirus, or was that for efficiency purposes? I just want to make sure we're understanding what we're working with.
Yes, thank you. The MERV 13s are the higher grade filters that were recommended, not required, but recommended as an additional measure that could potentially help with the capturing, the coronavirus as it circulates the air and purifies the air. It was not required. It wasn't seen as a measure that made it any less safe if we didn't have it. But we felt that it was necessary, since it was recommended, and we also want the best air quality in our classrooms, that we went to that as a standard right now. And that we would be changing them out at a different rate than we had before. And so when there was a shortage in some of the units, and so there were 2 schools and the district office that were not changed out before the break. And so now we have that and we will complete that. So thank you for that clarification, because I know that some folks think that it is one of those measures that keep the virus from spreading, and that is not necessarily why they was recommended solely for that purpose. So those are things that we're working, again, trying to make sure that we continue to be vigilant and have the resources, the PPE, the testing necessary for us to maintain as safe an environment as we can at our schools, with our families as well. We are continuing to provide some things virtual. We had moved from in-person to virtual. Our PD day was moved to a virtual PD day, just to make sure that we, were sensitive to the fact that certainly we had a rise in cases, and folks were feeling uneasy about coming into, spaces with staff that they don't necessarily interact with on a daily basis. So we made the decision to change that day from an in-person PD to a virtual PD. So those are some of the things that we've been doing and continuing to keep abreast of the ever-changing guidelines that we get from public health. I'll just give you an example. Last week at my meeting on Tuesday with public health, because we have EOC meeting with all the superintendents of public health on Tuesday, I got a guidance on how to go about potentially doing contact tracing. Jason on Thursday goes to the designee training, and he got an update on different from what we got on Tuesday. So it's ever changing. And so we try to make the best in, making sense of it as quickly as we can, making the changes as needed. And in some cases, we have taken a more stricter look at the guidance and be more conservative. And so then Jason has to go and update that. And, we were told that somebody actually took ours and from our website and was passing it around as the decision tree. And now the county's making sure that we put our logos if we have changed it so that people know that it's our tree, our decision tree, not the one from public health. So, there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of confusion sometimes in all of this. And, we know that what we're trying to do is, keep everybody as safe as we can. And that's our main goal.
Are we following the county's guidelines or are we following the states? Because I know that I think I read somewhere the CTA is a little upset because there's discrepancies between the county of Santa Clara and the state of California in terms of contact tracing or other guidelines.
Yeah, so we're following the state, the county. The county is more stricter than the state, and then we are actually being more stricter than the county. I know that there was concern, the guidance about whole school contact tracing and not notifying close contacts by having a weekly testing cycle. That is due to expire on the 11th, unless otherwise extended. We decided to not go with that after all. And so we moved back to individual contact tracing. The amount of work for doing the other whole group contact tracing and testing was just not manageable. And so we went back to what we had been doing all along and following the decision tree and then identifying those close contacts as before.
So if the school district decided to follow the state's guidelines and not the counties, they can do that?
No, we have to follow the county. We have to follow the county because it's stricter. We can be more stricter than the county, but we can be less stricter than the
But
county.
what would happen to a school district in our county that chose to follow the state's guidelines? Not the counties.
So are you talking about the concern from
In terms
CTA
of contact
specifically?
tracing, well, for example,
Yeah,
contact tracing.
so we were given that option. We weren't mandated to do it that way. So this,
Okay, would a school district have the freedom to choose between the state or the counties? Even though the county is stricter?
so if it's about the contact tracing, yes, we would be able to
That's an
follow.
example. There's
Yes.
other areas too, but
Yeah.
that's just an example.
Yeah, so the public health didn't actually tell us that we needed to follow that particular model.
Public health is the county.
Yeah.
Okay.
They didn't ask us to follow that. They said, you may follow this if you follow these things, or you may stay with what you were doing, and we chose to
Or you
stay.
could follow the states.
Well, still the Santa Clara County Public Health guidelines. But so you had three options. Jason, I don't know if I'm,
No, because I'm wondering what would happen to the school district that decided to follow the state's guidelines?
So you must follow the strictest guidelines that are presented to you. If there are different, so that is based on California and the county guidance, California Public Health Department as well as the county. Follow the most strict guidelines that are provided to you as a district. In this particular case with the contact tracing, there were multiple options that were available to us. And all three options would have been approved by the state. there is concern that the interpretation by the county, Santa Clara County, of the California guidance was incorrect. That's something that the county is working on with CTA to clarify that.
So it's not clear yet.
So as far as I know, it's not clear yet.
Got it. I do have another question. I know that the mask mandate for indoors is supposed to end on February 15th. Can you clarify, that does not include the schools?
That is correct. The school, the K-12 mask mandate is not included in that order. So we will continue to have to adhere to the mask in our K-12 settings.
Are we going to communicate that in advance to the parents so that they're aware that not sending their child to school with no mask?
Yes, yes. So I'm working with Valaire on developing that communication. We are also scheduling town hall meetings for next week so that we can clarify that, give them an update on the testing opportunities, and then also on the test kits so that they know that these will be coming home and how we want them to use them.
Board members, do you have any other questions for Juan? Thank you so much, Juan. We know it's very confusing times right now.
Yeah, we want to get at a point where we get back to just talking about students and not necessarily on testing and contact tracing for sure. It does take quite a toll on staff, to do everything that we're doing and trying to keep everybody safe. I know it's necessary, but it is taking a toll. So I appreciate the support from the board and understanding when questions come up from our community as well that can be very confusing.
We appreciate the diligence of staff and the community as well. All right, moving on. Oh, thank you for that, Superintendent Cruz. Moving on to item 9.04, resolution number 2022-04, celebrating the life and legacy of Cesar E. Chavez. One.
Yeah, so this is our annual resolution that we bring to the board. Once again, just highlighting the life of somebody that had a tremendous impact in our community and certainly in for those that have to work out in the fields. And so we bring this forward in recognition of that and highlighting that so that our community can learn from his work and continue his legacy.
Juan, I was going to ask you, past years, they've had a, breakfast where the Chavez family comes and Caesar's honored. Do you know if anything, have you heard anything of that taking place?
I did get a save the date. I will send it to all of you. They're projecting that they may return to the in-person event. They did send a save the date a couple of weeks ago. So I will send that out in the event that any of you would like to go.
I just want to mention one thing about Cesar also, that he also served his country in the military. So, aside from being the labor leader and all the other achievements, he also, again, served his time. A very smart individual. I mean, coming from the background that he came from, to go up through the ranks like he did, and the achievements in his life, really something that we need to celebrate and commemorate. So I'm glad that we had this resolution here before us this evening. Thank you.
Move to approve resolution number 2022-04, celebrating the life and legacy of Cesar E. Chavez.
Second.
Item 9.04, resolution number 2022-04, celebrating the life and legacy of Cesar E. Chavez. Has been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And that is unanimous. Moving on to item 9.05, resolution number 2022-05, Women's History Month. Board Member Afsal Berta.
This is also an annual resolution that we bring forward. And I did just want to point out a couple of things that we had. This school district had taken the stance that we should provide menstrual hygiene products for all 100% of students. And that was actually prior to the new legislation that was recently signed by Governor Newsom, AB 367, which now requires that. So I do think our district has, historically taken a stance to really make sure we are supporting the needs of our students. The one adjustment or feedback rather that I received a little bit late for the document, but I would like us to amend where it says now therefore it be resolved to be more inclusive instead of feminine hygiene products to simply state menstrual hygiene products. But other than that, I'm glad we're bringing forward this resolution and continue to acknowledge that there's inequities that exist for women, historically, but also in this day and age. With that, Mr. President, I move that we approve Resolution 2022-05, Women's History Month.
Second.
With that change.
With that change.
Second with the change.
Member of Alberta, I do have one. I do see that feminine hygiene products one more time in the whereas before. You want that to be amended to menstrual hygiene
That one's
products?
related to the ed code, which is why I didn't touch that one.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. Well, that's all I had. Item 9.05, resolution number 2022-05, Women's History Month, along with the amended portion stated by member of Alberta. As moved and seconded, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. Moving on to resolution number 2022-06, adopting a conflict of interest code. Jason? Or one?
Attention. Attached to the resolution adopting a conflict of interest code, the Political Reform Act, Government Code, Sections 87300 to 87313 requires each public agency in California to adopt and promulgate a conflict of interest code. This resolution is typically brought to the board for adoption every 2 years, but since we had some changes in administrative positions, we're bringing it to the board again this year. And as you can see, attached is the resolution for your review. And I will open it up to any additional questions the board members may have.
Board members, do we have any questions for Jason on this resolution?
And these are the staff that are required to submit the Form 700 as the board as well annually. So
seeing none, I'll motion.
Mr. President, I move to approve item 9.06, resolution 2022-06, adopting a conflict of interest code.
Second.
Item 9.06, resolution 2022-06, adopting a conflict of interest code has been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, and that's unanimous. Moving on to item 9.07, resolution number 2022-07, board compensation for a missed meeting, member Sanchez.
yeah, so we bring this forward for the missed meeting, the last meeting that board member Sanchez missed.
Move to approve resolution 2022-07, board compensation for a missed meeting for member Sanchez.
Second.
Resolution number 2022-07, board compensation for a missed meeting for member Sanchez has been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Abstentions? So 4 ayes and 1 abstention. Moving on to item 9.08, 2022 ballot for CSBA Delegate Assembly. Superintendent Cruz.
Yeah, so we bring this forward for your consideration. There are 4 vacancies and 4 candidates.
Yeah.
You don't have to vote for all four, but certainly these are the nominations, and there are 4 seats.
So what I mentioned, in all the years we've sat here, all the years, we've never had a minimum number like this, you know, for 4 seats. We've always had over. And so you have to select, you know, 4 or 5, but this time around, only 4 came forward. It was really, really surprising, you know.
What if we don't vote for any of them?
Well, you don't have to. Just, but you know, these are all good people, and they're putting, I mean, there's a lot of work. That's why you only have 4 coming forward, because there's a lot of work involved in this, with these positions.
You're one of them, right, George?
Yes, I'm one of them. That's correct. Yes, next year I would run if you know, if need. Well, you still have to run even if this, if you have only, you know, like 4, like right here.
That's more surprising.
But I would vote for all of them. Jody Muir has been a former president, Mary Patterson from Morgan Hill. We always like to have kind of a nice distribution of board members. So you have Lorena, you know, Chavez, of course, from East Side. We always vote for our individuals here in our area. And then the last one, David Guidry from Los Gatos, Saratoga Union, is a very good person. He'll be a good delegate, you know. And he'll join me as the only kind of the only male members of this of the delegate assembly for Santa Clara. So just he and I. So anyway, but I would vote for all 4.
I just want to clarify, this is for 2022, 2024, right?
2-year terms.
So the recommendation on here says 2021, but I just want to clarify it's 2022. It might just be a typo.
Oh, yeah. In the recommendation.
On the board, yeah, on the board.
That is a typo. The ballot itself is 2022 to 224. When the motion is made, if we can make sure that
Sure,
we can.
for the term.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm more surprised in why this has to come to a vote.
Yeah, same here. I'm surprised. Never seen that before.
I'll take a motion at any time, board members, on.
I'd like to make a motion to go ahead and approve all these 4 individuals to be delegates on the delegate assembly from Region 20, which is our region. Yes, for 2022 through 2024, 2-year periods.
Second.
Motion, I mean, item 9.08 has been moved and seconded. For all 4 members on the nomination. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 And I'll abstain.
Aye, 4 ayes and 1 abstention. Okay, moving on to item 10, communications from our superintendent.
Yes, just want to report to the board that we've started our annual visits of our charter schools. And so that report and recommendations for the extension of the 2-year terms for eligible charter schools per the change in the law and their MOUs will be brought forward with those annual reports as soon as we are able to complete the visits and complete the reports. We were last time we did this in a virtual way. Now that everybody's in person, we are able to go to the schools and see for ourselves what's going on, talking to staff, talking to students, talking to parents. And so that we've been engaged in that over this week and last week, and making sure that they're following what they said that they would in the petition, but also in ensuring that they're following the COVID protocols public health has outlined as well. So just look forward to being able to bring those reports to you this spring. No other actions to report.
Moving on to item 11, communications from our Board of Education, 11.01, board member reports. And this time we'll start off with Daniel.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to say thank you to all the parents who came out earlier this evening for Meadows. As myself, a former parent of a Meadows student, I couldn't be happier. That place left us with a good impression. I'm happy to hear that the parents are still receiving the same high level of service from that staff, and I can't say enough positive good things about that. And I'm just glad to hear the good feedback from the meeting that we had earlier.
Rudy?
No report.
Mona?
I just want to share that I participated in the CDAC meeting. We discussed, amongst other things, the recruitment strategies for special education. We still have some vacancies. So, anyone interested in special ed, we do have a number of vacancies, and hopefully we'll be able to get some of those filled soon. I also want to thank the principals and administrators for their efforts on the safety plans. I think the study session went really smoothly, and there's a lot of things going on, so it was nice to see some attention to those as well. And then I know Rudy and I don't know if anyone else, but we did watch part of the lunar New Year's celebration live stream from Windmill Springs, and their staff and students did such an excellent job showcasing our talented students. It was a really nice thing to see, even though it was virtual for us. But I know I saw parents, trying to get the camera up to the Zoom screen just to be able to capture their students performing. But so really well done. Thank you.
You want to, George?
Just a couple of things real quick. As some of you know, I was appointed to the Annual Education Committee for CSBA, being a delegate from Region 20. So we had our first meeting last week and kind of talked about this past conference, what we saw that was really good. And then what we saw that needed some improvement. And so a good discussion. Aside from myself, Rosemary Kamai from the county board is also a member. So there's 2 of us from Region 20, and there's 12 altogether on the committee. And so our next meeting will be coming up next week, and we'll be talking pretty much about speakers and who we want to see. And hopefully we get a speaker like we had at the last one, Dr. Victor Rios, who was very dynamic and really got us off to a solid start. So we'll probably be looking for somebody similar to him for the conference, which will be, I think I mentioned San Diego. Then it goes to San Francisco the following year, then it goes to Sacramento. And San Francisco is probably going to be out in the future because it's getting a little bit too expensive to be in that city. And then the other thing, I did attend the Santa Clara County School Boards Association meeting, and there's going to be a legislative session. You're all invited to. It's a virtual meeting, so they invite all the elected officials, and so that's going to be on Saturday, February 26th in the morning. I think it kicks off around 9:30 a.m. But you'll get information. All of you get information from the School Boards Association. And so anyway, but that, you might, be interested in listening to what the elected officials have to say about education in general. And that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, George. And for mine, I just hope everyone had a great Lunar New Year and celebrate the rich culture and diversity of San Jose, what San Jose has to offer. And well, firecracker season is over officially. So
go back to sleep.
So with that, I will move on to item 12, future business. We have none. Future meeting dates. Our next meeting will be March 8th, 2022 at 8 p.m. We have a parent meeting as well at 6:30. And you could read all the other future meeting dates then. Item 14, closed session. We don't have a reason to go back to closed session, so I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
Mr. President, I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Adjournment has been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And are finished at 9:31 PM.